My name is Camille Hart. I'm 35, a senior software developer who could deliver an enterprise security platform half asleep. Yet somehow I'm still learning how to staunch wounds my family pretended weren't there. To outsiders, Fairfield, Connecticut looked like a postcard, white columns, clipped hedges. Summer gatherings beside a heated pool. Inside that house, warmth was a costume we wore only for pictures. I was taught early to make myself small and handy. Straight A's, debate team captain, scholarships that let them stop paying attention. The applause always landed on my older brother, Lucas, despite his average grades and an unremarkable golf swing. When I brought home a perfect report card, my father, Edward, would murmur that excellence was expected and maybe we shouldn't flaunt it to Lucas. That message lodged in my back like a splinter. Your value equals your output, and even then, don't trouble anyone. On Sunday, I walked into Maison Bleu in Back Bay at precisely 11 and found them arranged like a stage scene. My mother, Marjorie, shimmered in pearls. My father wore navy and kept his distance. Lucas, expensively unshaven, squinted at the light a beat too long. I ordered sparkling water and coffee. My father corrected the server, as if my body belonged to their script. I let it pass. There's a way to cradle a coffee cup that reads like indifference, but functions as armor. We made the usual small talk, while my mother composed the air around her. When I mentioned my team had launched a platform now in pilot with 3 major banks, Marjorie cut in to proclaim a mythical real estate closing Lucas had supposedly just completed. I had already checked the accounts. I knew the deal had collapsed. I knew the withdrawals near a casino were not random. I knew about the Lake Champlain cabin renovation and how the new plan had devoured the little wood-paneled library my grandmother Elise left me in her will. I knew they hadn't asked because asking would have made my ownership real. Mimosas arrived for the table I hadn't wanted. Each time I said actually, my mother's smile tightened a degree. Lucas scrolled his phone beneath the table, his knee jittering, and I watched the tremor in his hands the way a paramedic watches a breath. The conversation, as it always did, swerved into corrections about me. My entree was predictable. My personal life, disappointing. My independence, admirable in principle, but, according to Marjorie, made me difficult. When I brought up the cabin library, my father brushed the will off as a technicality, and my mother called the room musty. Lucas snorted about my dusty books, then shifted into a plea to raise his withdrawal limits for business expenses. I kept slicing my toast into precise triangles because neat triangles were the only controllable element in that room. Then came a line delivered with a practiced smirk. You know, Camille, you're lucky we even include you. Pity goes a long way. It landed like a joke you're forbidden to react to. For a moment, the world drowned out. Every childhood vignette resurfaced at once. The forgotten invitations, my father's eyes glued to a BlackBerry during my valedictorian speech, the way my mother studied me as if I were a dress she'd buy if it fit better. I set my cup on its saucer. I folded my napkin in my lap. I looked up and said, "Thank you for your honesty." For the first time, my voice didn't tremble. Marjorie blinked, stripped of her favorite instruments, my shame, my defense, my apology. We finished brunch in a caricature of normalcy. Edward talking markets I used to brief him on. Lucas counting down to some private timer only he could hear. My mother critiquing strangers with the surgical efficiency of a seamstress with a ripper. Outside on the sidewalk, the spring sun was defiantly lovely. Lucas leaned in and asked if I could spot him $5,000 until Friday. I told him I'd see what I could do and felt the words calcify into fossil before they left my mouth. I drove home on autopilot, a 20-minute corridor between 2 lives. My Cambridge apartment with its industrial beams, plants that tolerated my neglect, a corkboard of postcards from people who genuinely liked me greeting me, like a place that remembered my name. I hung my coat, dropped my keys in their small ceramic dish, and settled into the chair that had taught my spine how to relax. The crying arrived like weather, not theater, cleansing. 15 minutes later, with the calm that follows a storm, I opened my laptop and went to work. I had constructed the Hart family's digital backbone over 7 unpaid years. Trusts, investment portals, automated bill pays, property accounts, redundancies layered inside redundancies. Edward demanded convenience. I supplied a master admin with multi-factor protocols he never fully read. The master admin was me. I documented everything. If they later called me vindictive, I wanted a record that would outlast the tremor in their voices. Transaction histories, access logs, the telltale casino cash drains, the signed consent I drafted for my father to give me administrator control, the clause in Elise Hart's will that reserved the library for the lifetime use of her granddaughter, Camille Hart, as a place for learning and reflection. I backed it all up to an offline vault. I texted Theo, a corporate lawyer whose calm could lower a room's temperature, asking for a referral for someone who ate family financial knots for breakfast. He sent Dana Whitaker, brilliant, ethical, merciless with paperwork. At 11 on the dot, I executed the smallest, most. I began by shutting down the auto payments that had quietly kept their credit cards spotless in public. Then I tightened the security on the investment account so that no one, not even me, could access it without a second person's approval. I stripped away the overdraft protections Edward pretended didn't exist. The skeleton of the system remained, but I removed the cushions. Next, I drafted a short but formal email to both the family attorney and the county's permitting office in Vermont. As a co-owner, I stated I did not give consent for the demolition of the protected library. I attached the will and made it clear that all construction must halt until reviewed. Any future correspondence should be directed to counsel, signed, Dana Whitaker. After that, I sent a single, concise message to my parents and brother. Effective immediately, I was stepping down as administrator of the family finances. Updated safeguards were in place to protect accounts during the transition, and I would not be available for direct contact while I reconsidered my place in this family. I hit send, powered off my phone, and sat with the silence. But it wasn't emptiness. It was space, the first real breathing room I'd allowed myself since childhood. Somewhere in Back Bay, a decline card would ping during a charity gala. Somewhere near Mohegan Sun, a debt collector would tighten the pressure on my brother, matching the rhythm of his choices. And here in my living room, a woman who understood systems better than she had ever understood love finally chose herself. Not out of vengeance, but out of repair. The air felt different, lighter, genuine. The call started at dawn. 17 missed before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. 23 texts lit up the screen like small, insistent demands. I ignored them all. Instead, I brewed the beans I liked, stretched, and let silence sit where their voices once lived. By 9:30, I was in the office of Dana Whitaker. The attorney Theo had said was sharp as a scalpel. She wasted no time with comfort. She spread my documents across the table, scanned every clause, and finally said the words I had been desperate to hear. Your position is strong. The cabin library, she confirmed, was legally protected by Elise's will. My authority over finances had been granted directly by Edward, and the withdrawals from Lucas's trust spoke louder than any accusation they could try to pin on me. The only question left, she said, was what outcome I wanted. I told her 3 things: secure my rights to the property, fully separate myself from financial control, and protect against being held liable for Lucas's debts. She nodded, as if none of this was radical, just common sense. Leaving her office, I felt my lungs fill with something like oxygen. I walked straight to a bank unaffiliated with my family and opened brand new accounts. I moved my savings out of reach, like lifting children to high ground before a flood. By the time I left, 30 more missed calls had stacked up on my phone. One voicemail from my father dripped with old authority. What the hell do you think you're doing? Fix this now. His tone had once turned me to stone. That morning, it shattered against me like waves breaking on a seawall. I didn't call back. Instead, I went to see my therapist, Caroline. She peered over her glasses and said calmly, "This isn't rebellion. This is a boundary. The guilt you feel, that's the programming they installed to keep you serving them." Her words, steady and clinical, anchored me. The week unfolded like a storm I had already forecast. Lucas's messages shifted from arrogance to pleading. "You've ruined me. You know I can't stop. Please, 30,000 by tomorrow or else." For the first time, I told him the truth. Your gambling debts are not my responsibility. He accused me of orchestrating his downfall, blaming me for removing the safety nets, as if they had ever belonged to him in the first place. My father's lawyer contacted Dana, demanding I restore financial access in exchange for family reconciliation. Dana replied with surgical precision, Camille has formally resigned. All protocols have been updated, and regarding the cabin, an injunction is already in place. My mother tried a softer tactic, sending an email laced with half apology. Perhaps my words at brunch were too sharp. Families should keep disagreements private. Call me so we can restore harmony. Dana circled the lack of accountability. Classic minimization, she said. I didn't respond. Meanwhile, the consequences piled up. Edward's platinum card failed in public. Marjorie's country club dues went unpaid. Lucas's debts forced the sale of his condo and car. The cabin project stalled under permit investigation. For once, the structure of their lives showed the truth. Fragile, propped up by illusions I had always been tasked to uphold. But I was steadier than I expected. Every day I ignored their calls was like pulling another brick from the wall that once crushed me. My career flourished in the quiet. I said yes to a conference I'd always declined. I shift work with a clarity that surprised me. Evenings belonged to friends who celebrated me, not my usefulness. Months passed, and the patterns became clear. Anger, bargaining, attempts at reconciliation, always aimed at pulling me back into service. My parents never changed script. But 6 months after brunch, Lucas did. He walked into Dana's office carrying a sobriety chip instead of a Rolex. Hitting bottom was necessary, he told me. And you forced it. I'm not here for money. Just to say I see it now. I didn't promise closeness, but I didn't close the door either. For the first time, my brother spoke to me without entitlement. That shook me more deeply than any threat my parents could deliver. By a year, I was living differently. I'd bought a small lake cottage in New Hampshire, paid for with a fair market buyout of my share in the cabin. The walls came with built-in bookshelves, a gift from the universe Elisa herself would have approved of. I celebrated birthdays with friends who knew my favorite cake. When I ran into my father at a conference, he looked suddenly older. My mother tried to corner me at a wedding, repeating the same tired lines about appearances and family. Both encounters showed me nothing had changed. They still clung to the old structure, but I no longer lived inside it. I was outside, at a distance their disapproval couldn't touch. 2 years after that brunch, I sat on the dock of my cottage, journal in hand, watching the sunset stain the sky. The words Marjorie once used as a weapon, "You're lucky we include you," returned to me, not as an insult but as the key that unlocked the cell. They had meant pity. I now understood them as permission. If inclusion came only at the cost of shrinking myself, then exclusion was freedom. I closed my notebook and let the stars take their place. Freedom, I realized, isn't a blank slate. It's the steady act of reclaiming what is yours. It's refusing to carry what was never meant for you. It's knowing, quietly and firmly, that worth is not granted. It's lived. Thank you for walking with me through this journey. If you've ever had to draw painful lines with people who were supposed to love you, I hope my story gives you strength. Please like this video, share your own experience in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Unfair Love for more stories that remind us your value does not come from those who try to erase it,